What's up, everybody? Dead Girl here. It's Wednesday, and that means we're back. We're back to our live shows. We've got a new guest kicking off our, I guess it would be new season. I don't know what to call this yet. We're still kicking it around. But joining me this evening, we have a very talented man. We have an author. We have a haunter. And I believe you worked in some TV and some movies, maybe, as well?
Many years ago in a previous life, yes.
This is Mr. Mark Muncy. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it is a pleasure. I'm honored to be here on Ash Wednesday for our wonderful, Evil Dead fans out there. Yes. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I know there are a lot of people out there who are watching and who are, new and not necessarily familiar with your work. So if you don't mind, would you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. As you said, I did a little early work in the Hollywood of the East at the time, which was the barren wastelands of 80s syndicated television in Florida. Worked on everything from Swamp Thing and Super Force and Superboy to Thunder in Paradise with Hulk Hogan.
Nice.
I was a behind-the-scenes guy mostly, and I would do some occasional on-camera stuff. Okay. But, the most famous of which being Psycho 4, have a little mini cameo.
Nice.
Became a dad, got a real job, and, changed careers. And, but that love for horror goes way back to my childhood and all that. Spooky appearances and strange things happening. So then when time came, loved horror nights when it became a thing, and it just became too much to go every year because it was getting so expensive, and I had a young family. So we decided to make our own, and we created a haunt here in St. Petersburg, Florida, the infamous Hellview Cemetery. Hellview Cemetery was based all on local lore and legends. I decided instead of, the werewolf jumping out at you, it would be the skunk ape jumping out at you. And instead of some strange vampire queen, we would have Madame Moore, an infamous bordello owner from Tampa. So we spookied them up. We made them, Tales from the Crypt style. We called it Hellviewing the stories. So they weren't the exact legends. And most people walking through the haunted house had no idea, right. Oh, that's a monster jumping out of me. But those that went to the website got a little taste of the stories and all that. And we did that for 19 years.
Oh, wow.
And we were very big, very popular. And then from 1996 to 2015, I believe. And then the city shut us down. We were a little too big for our britches. And we were still doing it in my backyard.
Wow.
Thousands of people coming through every weekend. And we were free. We never charged. It was all donations for charity. And when we shut down, towards the end, we were getting all these people saying, oh, you did this story. That's based on this creepypasta. And this is based on this, urban legend. And I'm like, those are based on our urban legends from Florida, not these. And we found out people had been copying and pasting from our website into our No Sleep on Reddit.
Oh,
wow. In the early days of creepypastas and all that. So that's when we decided we better publish these in a book so people know where they originally came from. So we self-published Tales from Hellview Cemetery. And those were the spooky versions. And we filled it with photos of our fabulous haunt. And then we got approached by a real publisher right about the time Hellview got shut down.
Okay.
And that became, can you do the real legends? Can you do the real stories? And the history behind them. And being the history buff that I am, my lovely then wife-to-be and now wife and I set off on the road, traveled several thousand miles and never left the state. And that became our first bestseller, Eerie, Florida, from the History Press.
Now, I got to ask you, the original book that you guys self-published, is that still available anywhere? Or have you thought about making that available, if not?
It's still available on Amazon, I believe. It's a print-on-demand thing. So
okay.
I still get occasionally somebody saying, hey, we got it. And that's always nice to see.
Oh,
so,
okay.
We have a few early editions that might make it to Bartow this weekend.
Oh, nice. Okay. And we'll get into some of that later on. Now, I do have a question. So you've done the home haunting thing, and that's always a lot of fun. My husband and I do that every year as well. Have you guys thought about maybe redoing it again, like finding a location and opening up at a grander scale?
It's definitely, it's been a number of years, so it might take some doing to get it restarted for Hellview to rise from the grave. It has been considered. We did for a few years. We looked for places, very hardcore, but Pinellas County is very anti haunts. That's why there are no professional haunts in the Tampa Bay area. And Florida is also fairly inconvenienced by them in general. That's why you have to go into unincorporated areas. That's why Screamageddon is in the middle of nowhere. That's why it's always in the theme parks. A lot of my haunter friends, look what happened to Chamber of Terror, and so many of these others. And even the Orlando, tourist areas have trouble. Look at Mortem Manor has been fighting they've been trying to get that thing closed for years, and
it's not happening though. They're still going.
They're fighting. They will be dragged to hell before they close. So, but it's like they don't want them here. It's it's against the family friendly atmosphere a little bit. But it's just zoning. The theme parks don't want the competition.
Right, and I mean and let's be real. It's not like it's gonna hurt the theme parks. You know what I'm saying? Because people are still gonna fly into town and they're still gonna go to the theme parks. But it's nice to have I don't want to say smaller haunts, like the independent haunts. You can go get a taste of what it's to actually is to get scared, as opposed to being stuck in a conga line and watching the scares, 5 minutes ahead of you. I always hated that. So, if it ever happens, definitely let me know. I'd love to come visit you guys.
That was our design. We didn't do the conga lines. We did, we broke it up. Although we handled the crowds very well. We did provide. Leonard Pickle helped. The great Leonard Pickle helped co-design one year. He was kind of our mentor for a number of years. Yeah. We had a lot of big names helping us over the years, and I would love for it to come back, and maybe when we get a new mayor, because the old mayor used to come every year and bring his family. And then suddenly we got a new mayor, and that's the year they were denied our event permit.
So he was Scrooged on Halloween then. Yes. That is not right.
Yep.
He needs to go.
But the 100,000 Christmas lights can be up in the neighborhood down the street, and nobody cares.
Well, of course, because it's Christmas, and, scary things are too scary, I guess, for some folk.
Yes, exactly.
But then there are us weirdos that enjoy it all year round.
Of course.
Now, you've got 3 books that you've written, not just the 2, and Eerie Florida was your first. And I know you were saying that, you were approached by the publishing company and they asked you to tell you about the real stories behind some of these things. How did you narrow down what was going to go into that first book? Because there's a lot in there.
That was the problem. When I first, we say 3 books. That's the now that I'm writing. Because before the TV time, I actually wrote back then in high school, college. I was a ghostwriter for the old Executioner series, the Don Pendleton books and stuff.
Oh, wow.
A couple of those back in the day. And like I said, I became, I took the real job and got out of all that. Yeah. Then my kids grew up and I got back into it. Now, Eerie, when we approached the publisher, they were like, oh, we love these, Hellview stories. We'd like you to do these stories. And I'm like, I have a stack, because I've been researching for years of stories and emails, because we had a little link on the website for Hellview, which was tell us your ghost story, because we'd like to incorporate it.
Oh, okay.
And now to put some time frame in this, it was an AOL address and a GeoCities website. So that'll take you down some internet history for you youngins out there.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. But we still had all these files. I still had all those emails, and some of them were amazing. And so it became they're like, well, we don't do that. We want it to be like a travel guide book, and 50,000 words, no bigger. And I'm like, so, all right, well, if I cut the bibliography, that's, about 3,000 words. If I cut this, I cut that. And so I could squeeze a couple more stories in. And I'm like, no one's going to take this seriously anyway. This was just for fun. So we narrowed it down to a top 25. And then I think even then we had to cut 2 or 3 stories, which made us very sad. And then, like I said, it took off like wildfire. This History Press had never really had a hit that wasn't written by a politician, or someone like that, where the political party buys the books.
Yeah.
This was actually selling, and suddenly, I'm on Coast to Coast AM, and I'm on a bunch of big shows and Discovery Channel and all that as a talking head, and then suddenly it's their biggest selling book they've had, and they were like, and they've done haunted history books and stuff like that, but nothing had ever quite taken off like this.
Yeah.
So then they were like, hey, Mark, remember you said you had all those other stories, and take some time and get the second one out. And we'd already written it.
Oh, nice. So you were already mostly done by the time they were like, go ahead and do that additional one.
Yeah. So Freaky came out. But the nice thing was we had a year to go back and revisit the stories, do deeper dives, and we were also allowed to put some stuff we debunked in there, but they were still cool historically.
Yeah.
And were just fun stories to tell. So Freaky's like, the middle child, the one that got all the love,
yes.
And, but none of the fun of the newness. It did really well as well. Not as well as Eerie, but still really well.
Okay.
And so that's when they were like, hey, now we have this haunted history series that we've been doing for years, and it needs an update. You guys are having so much fun with it. And so that was last October 2019. Creepy Florida came out, and that one is all ghosts, all phantoms, all spirits.
Yeah.
But because we are fans of the monsters and the horror, we found a few ghosts that fit an unusual bill in that book. So for our regular fans, they would go, ooh, yeah, that's definitely a Mark and Carrie twist there. So nice. And my lovely wife, she's the illustrator and the photographer for most of it. I do some of the photography, but she's got the eye. So
my husband's the same way. Whenever we go out, I just let him photograph, and then I steal all his pictures because they're amazing. Yep. So I can relate to that.
Yep, I get lucky, but she's the talent. So.
Yes. Now you guys have gone, all over the place. You've hit the Panhandle. You've been down to Miami. You've pretty much gone all over Florida, and with every stories from like the Devil's Chair in Casadega to Skunk Ape, which we mentioned earlier. What are some of your favorite spots that you visited that maybe aren't as well known to most people?
Because the big ones, everybody knows Robert the Doll. Everybody knows, down in Key West, and well, not everybody does, and that's why our books do well. It's like, okay, we thought everybody knew these things, and people didn't,
but apparently not. So yay!
Yeah, some places people should know, like just because of their dark and sordid past, like Rosewood, with the Rosewood Massacre, and the Dozier School for Boys, probably the most terrifying place in Florida that is, may soon be torn down, but it's one of those, it still needs to be investigated, how deep the corruption was there, how many children did disappear there. It's, you think this is urban legend stuff, but this stuff is very true. Right. But I gotta say, off the beaten path, I love places like the Devil's Tree down in Port St. Lucie. Now the right thinking people especially people who are serial killer fans, know that story. And I love that one because people come to it from several different directions. People who are fans of serial killers go into it because a man with 3 names was there. Anybody with 3 names in Florida was either a politician or a serial killer. Yep. And this one was a serial killer, and it was Gerard John Schaefer. And he was a cop who liked to kidnap hitchhikers, and he'd like to catch them in pairs, and then he would take them to this tree in the middle of nowhere, chain them up, and do terrible things to them, then kill one of them, and then continue to do terrible things to them. Right. And then he would move on and do it again and again. And he got away with it for a long time, and he had to move, got caught at his new job doing the same thing, and they tied it to the deaths at the original location that they had just discovered. And he went to trial, only got convicted for 2.
Oh, wow.
And a false imprisonment because of the people he almost did it to, who had escaped. And then on death row, he wrote a book called Serial Fiction, where he confessed to 86 more murders, but did it as fiction. So it's not... I didn't.
It's not an actual confession. It's just, here are some stories I wrote.
It's the OJ book, How I Could Have Done It. It's
This is what I would have done if it
yes.
were me and I were in
If it
those
were.
shoes.
And sadly, we won't ever know because he was killed by his cellmate. His cellmate took his eyes out and then stabbed him 49 times. So that's you got to upset somebody a lot.
That's a little excessive. 49, jeez.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy though. Anyway, but that's just the start. The tree itself. Some people say that the tree is what drove him to do it because it's this evil oak tree. It's the devil's tree. Okay. We have a lot of devil's stuff in Florida. Devil's Millhopper, which is a sinkhole on top of another sinkhole.
Yep.
It's the pit to hell. The Devil's Chair in Casadega.
Yes.
And then Devil's Tree. Now this tree is a live oak and it drips black sap. And so the story was if you collected the sap and made candles, it would be very potent for your satanic rituals or your dark spells.
Okay.
And so they would often find people in cloaks out there
collecting the sap.
Yeah. There was an old abandoned house there near it, and that's where Gerard knew it was an abandoned house and he could take people to. And some people say the tree was calling to him. So after he becomes kind of famous, more people find out about this tree and they start going out there. The house goes away. There's just the foundation now. And the tree, they're like, we've got to do something about this tree. So the town decides to cut it down. Okay. So they send 2 guys out with chainsaws. They start cutting the tree, and the chainsaw stops the minute it starts cutting the tree. So they bring out the second chainsaw. It breaks and just totally shuts down.
Oh, wow.
Broken. So they're like, all right, well, we got to go get a new chainsaw. So they go in their truck off to Home Depot, and they get in a head-on collision and die.
Wow.
So the legend of the tree grows.
Of course.
A few years later, a lady gets the brilliant idea. She's like, oh, those guys died because they had bits of the tree in their car. So if I go get bits of the tree and put it in my husband's car who's been cheating on me,
oh, Jesus,
I will get away with murder.
Right. Because I'm not technically doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem is she got in a car accident leaving the tree because she had bits in the car, and that's how the legend grows even more.
Wow.
So the city now buys the land around it, turns it into a park.
Yes.
And then they take the path away from the tree because they're still going to kill this tree. So they seal it with cement, that hole where the sap is coming out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't kill it. It grows around it. So now it's literally impervious to pain because it's got a cement trunk.
Jeez.
They poisoned it. That didn't kill it. No one's tried to chop it down again. But like I said, they just try to hide it away. But those who know, go down to Port St. Lucie and Oak Hammock State Park and go there. And when we went the last few times, every time we've gone, there's been candle wax on the roots where someone's done a recent.
Oh, wow.
There. So our advice and what the park rangers there say is please don't do rituals at the tree.
Right.
Please don't take pieces of the tree.
Leave it alone.
And don't burn candles in a dry forest in Florida. There's little box turtles there. There's wonderful animals there.
Yes.
Please don't burn that down.
No. Go look. Don't touch.
And now it's not in the middle of nowhere. It's actually behind a nice housing development. So it's kind of interesting that people don't know about the history. So.
Wow. Could you imagine living there and having no idea and then opening up like your book and starting to read and be like, wait a minute. That's behind the house.
My house. Yeah. I walked by that tree. So, yep. That's that's probably my most favorite of just the obscure places.
Yeah.
There's a few we write about that haven't fully reopened yet.
Okay.
And then there are a few from the older books, that sadly aren't there anymore.
Yeah, that have been gone because time and things happen. And exactly. It's funny, too, because my husband and I have started kind of venturing off and doing a lot more outdoor activities and going to different places. And we went to a couple of different cemeteries, and we stayed at a hotel that we had no idea was active. And it was just a happy booking accident. And then we started reading more about it, and I Googled something, and all of a sudden it was like haunted and spirits and all these things, and I was like, happy coincidence.
Yeah.
So
synchronicities.
Yes. So we have a good friend of ours who actually not too long ago was like, I want to go to the Devil's Tree. We should go. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So the story, of course, has fully sold me because it's really interesting. And I don't think people realize that there's so much history in Florida that hasn't really been tapped. You know what I mean? So it's great that you've got these books that have come out that kind of dive into all that.
Yeah, it was. I think our biggest honor was, bestseller list is always nice. New York Times bestseller list is always nice. But the fun thing is when we got told that they were making hardcover editions of our book because some private schools down in Miami wanted to use our book for their history book.
That's awesome.
Because we talk about the Seminole Wars and we talk about Rosewood Massacre, and the regular Florida history books don't. Seminole Wars is 2 sentences. And it's like, oh my goodness.
And you get in there with the details too, which is fantastic.
Like I said, everybody's like, so what's your background in history? Well, I took some history in college. I did not major in history. I majored in writing. That's why I had a day job for 20 years. And still do. I'll admit. It's because the history was just such an important part of it, and I was like, we have to go into this. And of course it was the History Press that had picked us up, so they had asked for a historical angle, but they never really pushed how much we did or how little we did. They wanted good books. So
which, I mean, they're very, it's funny too, because you can sit down and go, I'm going to read about this. And then you start going, and then you keep going into more and more, and then by the time you know, it's like 2:00 in the morning, and you have to go to bed because you have to work the next day. Which, oh well, happy things.
My heart grows 3 times. No, okay. And we did them as travel guides. We wrote them so you can literally follow the roads and zigzag down. You start in the Panhandle, go across over to Amelia Island, and then zigzag down the I-4, I-95s, and back across to Tampa Bay where we're home, and then down south, and then back across Alligator Alley over to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and then down to the Keys. And we always love it when people come up to us and they've got the bookmarks of every place they've been, or the little pins in their books and stuff like that. I love a well-worn copy. It just makes us so happy when we get those. So.
It's such a great guide too, because it's like, I mean, now you have the internet and the internet's great and all that, but I love a book anyway, and there's so much more information that I get out of it, and it's nice because it's literally, like you said, it's a roadmap of where you can go and find these places, so it's not like a secret. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people will go and they'll explore places, but they won't tell you where it is or how to find it, whereas the books are fantastic for that, especially if you want to go out and explore and get a good history lesson, to boot.
Yeah, we totally try not to put anything in there that you can't go to. That's the one thing. Like, if it's on private property, and if you can't even try to get into it, then we won't put it in the book. Right. It's one of those, a lot of places, are just, they don't want that kind of exposure and all that. And you can find those places still online and all that. And it's like, we don't need to put that in there. Right. And if there is a place that you can go by, but you still don't want to go in, we'll make note of that as well. It's like, you can drive by this, the house from the Unsolved Mysteries episode in Claremont, but the new owner doesn't like people coming up and knocking on his door.
They don't want visitors there.
Yeah.
Which I can
Besides,
totally
the ghost
understand.
is on the sidewalk. Why would you go inside the house?
Exactly. You don't need to. It's just there anyway.
Yeah.
Now, out of all the places that are maybe the more well-known, what is one of the places that you do enjoy visiting, whether it's, been multiple times or one-off?
I love Amelia Island. And everybody loves St. Augustine. I love St. Augustine. I love Key West. There's so many all the beach towns are fantastic. Yes. I love when you get further inland and you get to those dark, creepy spots, like this green swamp and the Ocala National Forest. Yes. That's where all the monsters live. We love those too. But Amelia Island's right on the Georgia border, and it is just got so much. It's it was run by pirates for a number of years. I mean, everybody thinks Pirates of the Caribbean. It was up there. That was the place that was the happening spot. When you have a Scottish mercenary take over your island called Gregor McGregor, that's about as Scottish as it gets, right? And he's taken over the island for Mexico because he's a mercenary, and and he's gonna keep it for Mexico from Spain. And and then we find out the Spanish are coming, and then he bails, and his pirates, and he leaves his friend in charge, and that friend bails and leaves his son in charge.
Oh,
and his son gets put on the hook for all his parents wrongdoing, and he's like, I'm not gonna let you hang me. So he tries to slit his own throat before the hanging. They get in. Oh, you're not denying us a hanging, so they save him. They stitch up his neck. And they go hang him the next day, and of course, pop goes the weasel. The head comes off,
right?
And in front of the whole town, amazing story. And of course, his ghost is all over the Amelia Island jail, walking around nearly headless Nick. I
like the reference.
Corey is the pirate's name. But that whole place, there's Bosque Bello Cemetery, the oldest cemetery in the European style cemetery in the United States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You just walk back into it. Everybody talks about Bonaventure and Savannah. And
yeah.
Of course, St. Augustine has Tolomato and the Huguenot Cemetery. But again, those are small cemeteries now. There's more. They were bigger, and the city's grown around them. There's probably still some bodies down there that you're driving over.
Yeah.
But, that's different. But Bosque Bello didn't have that. It's still there, and you can just go deep into the, classical, Spanish moss-covered trees, and you just go further back, and there's stones there to the 1500s.
Wow.
Yeah, the early settlers and stuff. So Fort Marion, the Fort Marion massacre. So yeah, you just go to that island, and it is full of haunts, full of history, and and it's beautiful, and it's being developed. And of course, one of our first stories was the grave of Wiccademus, this legendary beast and witch that had this demon under control. And how can you not love a demon named Wiccademus, right?
The name just rolls off the tongue.
Yes, exactly. And sadly, that whole path since the time we published has been bulldozed and is now a housing development.
Wow. Well,
I don't know if they found the demon grave or not, but they didn't publish it.
If not, they paved over it. You know what happens then?
They moved the bodies, but didn't move the tombstone.
That's how poltergeist happens.
Like that,
just saying. I know we've talked about. I haven't been to Amelia Island, and I've been wanting to go just to kind of check the place out in general because I've heard good things, and I've also the spooky side of it too. So it definitely has that draw.
Yeah. There's Madame Martina, I believe, was the voodoo queen of that area.
Okay.
And there's a great story about her and Blackbeard. One of the bordello ladies in town convinced this lieutenant that he should take over for Blackbeard. He should be the new Blackbeard. And he's like, well, I can't fight Blackbeard. He's too good with the sword. And they're like, well, we'll take you to Madame Martina, and she'll give you a potion that will make you impervious to swords.
Okay.
So he did. And he goes up and he challenges Blackbeard. Blackbeard stabs him, and he's like, ha ha ha, you can't hurt me. And then Blackbeard goes, and shoots him in the head.
Oh.
So
you covered part of your bases, but not the whole thing.
Yep. And of course, Blackbeard heard that the voodoo queen set him up, so he went out into the Bosque Bello Cemetery where she was supposedly hiding to find her, and never did. And he recalled his men and sailed away and never came back to Amelia Island because that was the place he almost got in trouble. So.
Oh, wow. Now, do you visit every location that's in the book?
Yep. Everyone. I feel like I can't write about a place if I haven't been there and seen it and to do it justice. Yeah. I know some people write just because in a lot of the places we have to go to the archives to get the history on them and stuff like that. So I know a lot of historians just write because they've read everything they can on it. Yeah. And that's fine, but sometimes you miss some things when you do that. And that's why we made it important to go, try to talk to as many people as we could, get as many eyewitnesses and stories. That was huge for us. And we also had one rule, modern journalism, you want 3 sources. Well, actually modern journalism, as soon as you hear it, you print it, and that's all that matters. But no,
doesn't matter if it's true or not, just go.
Yeah. You're supposed to get 3 sources, 3 verifications. And then, the old, Weekly World News was always 1. Somebody told it to them, it was good. You could print it.
Yep.
We split the difference. We did 2.
Okay.
We're like, as long as we have a second verification at least, then we know it's good. And, or at least something that somebody didn't just tell somebody, you know. It's,
right. It's not like you heard it from your brother's cousin's sister and all of a sudden it's
right.
fact.
Yeah. And there was one that from the Hellview days that I really wanted to do. We've been putting it in the haunt for years and nobody knew why the hell I was doing it. I kept putting this gnome in the haunt. I had a little yard gnome, but this was before zombie gnomes were a thing. I just had a yard gnome. And people were like, why are you putting it in there? I'm like, I got this letter from this old lady. And she told me in the 1940s her house was attacked by gnomes. And so I am putting a gnome in my haunt.
Okay.
And now when we started doing this book, Eerie, I was like, I really want to do this story. But by this time, the old lady had passed on.
Yeah.
And all I had was this initial email story, this crazy story. And I started, thankfully, the internet did come to my rescue. I reached out on, this was early days of Facebook and early days of Facebook groups. And I reached out to one of those, you grew up here when they were just starting those. And it was, you grew up near Lake Wales. And Lake Wales, we were already researching for Spook Hill, because you have to put Spook Hill in there. It's
of course.
But I wanted to put this story in. And I said, does anybody know about this weird story about a gnome or a little person being arrested in the 1940s and in your town? And a civilian worker for the police station contacted me and remembered the case.
Oh, wow.
Second verification. So we ran with that story. That became like our hit. I think poor Carrie had to draw hundreds of gnomes because she draws requests in all the books when for a little extra. And so she still draws gnomes like crazy.
Oh, wow.
Such a big story. And the town is trying desperately to find those arrest records, but it's 1940s, small police town. It
good luck.
May never be found. So
yeah.
Especially this story, because what they did was the family was losing all their fruit. They set up traps and they caught this little guy, no more than 12 inches, they said. And some stories say no more than 6 inches, which is crazy. And, a naked, hairy man. And it's like, okay, that is pretty crazy. But, they'd heard of Ripley's and heard of, Ringling was still down here in the winters at that time. Yeah. So Tom Thumb was around.
So it was still kind of plausible in their minds back then.
So they called the police. The police were like, this guy isn't stealing your fruit. He's this small, So they let him go. And then the next day they caught him again. And they're like, okay, we've still got problems. So this time they couldn't arrest him in a handcuff. So they put him in an orange crate. This is an orange grove right behind Bach Tower. And they take him away. And then what happens is that night, the lady said their house got attacked by dozens of them, throwing rocks and fruit and stuff at their house. So they called the police. The police came back and they couldn't figure out what language this thing was speaking. So they let him loose again. And the police are like, sorry, can't help you. Bye.
We're done.
Yeah, we're out. So the story goes that they found, one of the farmhands said, oh, they're red caps. And we've upset the Fae. So get a blessed stone from Ireland. Now this is the 1940s. And the family did it. They sent for a rock.
Wow.
They got it, and they put it in the orange grove and they never had any more problems. Now, when we went to investigate, we found out that is no longer a family farm. It is owned by one of the many orange conglomerates. Right. One that rhymes with Schmapacana.
Okay.
And because we can't say their name.
Right.
But we wrote to them, asked them if we could go just drive through their grove, supervised if preferred. And they were like, oh, no, it's fine. Just stay on the road. And you'll be fine. And so you go to Bach Tower, you go around it, and you come back, and suddenly you're on these old dirt roads. It's like being in 1930s Florida, driving through orange groves. And we're following this lady's directions that she had sent me years before. And I'm like, oh, the rock, it's going to be around this corner. There's a clearing.
Right.
Oh, my God. And there's all these white boxes everywhere. And I'm like,
no.
What is this? And then it's where they keep their bees.
Oh, wow.
So we did not stop. And we just drove very slowly so we didn't hurt any bees. But so we couldn't get a picture of the rock, but we were able to verify that all the directions were real and everything. So
that it actually led you to a place instead of into a wall or a lake or something.
Yeah, or something
to that
unusual.
nature.
Yep, so.
Yeah, I read. Cool. I was reading that one, and I was just like, "This is not a thrill." Like, in my head, I'm like, is this really a thing? Like, okay. And then I got reading more and more into it. And when I got to that part about the police just letting him go and being like, all right, we're done, I was like, I could kind of see that. Because after a while, I'm sure they'd be like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, you're talking a town that had maybe 2 cops.
Yeah.
Max. So, it's one of those. So who knows? It's one of those, but it was just such a fun story. We had to put it in. So
I'm glad you did. It was it definitely makes for a very interesting read.
Yes.
And it's almost one of those, like, is it fact or is it faked?
Is it? Yeah. And we try not to say anything. We try not to say, yes, this is real, or no, this isn't, unless, the historical facts, we know the historical facts.
Right.
But even then, sometimes they change, things develop and we learn things later. We hope to revisit a couple of the stories from Eerie.
Okay.
Because another one we found another part of a story like 6 months after it went to press.
Wow.
And it was a shame because we found the real story behind it. And that was the legend of Minnie Lights, or Minnie Lightning, the voodoo queen of St. Petersburg.
Oh,
and
wow.
That was another one of those, you hear 5 different versions of the same story.
Yep.
And, little alligator people going out and stealing your children at night, or little green lights that would come out and terrify you.
Mm-hmm.
Or she was Minnie Lightning. She's the reason we have so many lightning storms in Tampa Bay. And it's like, wow, what crazy story. And then you start looking into history, and there was a Mennonite lady. So Minnie Lights, Mennonite.
Okay.
Maybe that's it. She ran a boarding house, kept circus folk in it. It burned down.
Okay.
Well, that took place in Gibsonton, not in St. Petersburg, so it didn't fit.
Okay.
But maybe it could have cross-pollinated, and then, so we went to press with the story of the guy who had the preacher's daughter was disappeared, and they thought Minnie Lights had taken her, and so they thought this old lady was Minnie Lights, and they smashed her windows and tried to get her out, and then I was like, did you see lights? Did lights chase you? He said, yeah, it was the police. And so we went with that, and it was a lot of fun, and we just kind of made a light of the story. It was kind of cute.
Yeah.
We found the dark history 6 months too late.
Okay.
St. Petersburg was once the alligator farm tourist attraction mecca before Miami, before the railroads went all the way down there.
Okay.
And they had one in North St. Pete, and it was, drawing crowds. To draw crowds, they would let small children into the alligator pits to be chased. And they would kidnap children and throw them into this pit to be chased by the animals, usually African-American children. Oh. And you're like, that's terrible. That can't be real.
Yeah.
1930s.
It was a thing.
And we found in the St. Petersburg Museum of History's archives, we were researching Freaky.
Yeah.
We found a fan that you would have held up to blow your, cool your face, standing there. And it had the picture, it looked like a little copper tone ad of an alligator biting a small child's
Wow. Butt. Okay.
And it's terrible. So then it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Men with lights. So it was the men with lights would come out and steal your children at night on the south side of town. Or the alligator men would steal your children. So that's where Minnie Lights, alligator men, it all tied together. And it was like, where was this 6 months ago?
Right.
But thankfully we were able to put it in the St. Pete Times and a bunch of newspapers and
get the story, the actual story out of what was happening. But I could see that.
That's my one regret on Eerie, was that we were on a deadline. So had we known.
And it happens too. Stories like those, especially if it's a word of mouth thing, it starts as this thing. It's the old, what is it? Telephone thing. Where, you whisper one thing and it comes out at the end as something completely different, but it may still be slightly relevant to the beginning of it. So it makes sense. And I'm glad that you guys were able to actually find out what the true story was.
That's what it all boils down to, is, you just dig and, eventually you find it. And hopefully you find it before it goes to press.
But that's all right, though, because you still got it out there. And it's definitely something I'm sure fans would love to have revisited. I know you guys are, and you kind of told me this earlier, that you're working on a 4th book now?
Yes, we're finally out of Florida. Back to my home land up in the Ohio Valley. We are doing Eerie, Appalachia. And
nice.
I'm going to give you guys a tease. We were researching a Florida case for an upcoming Florida book that's still on the back burner now. It was supposed to be the next project, but it got put on the back burner. And it's a UFO case. Now, we've done UFOs before a little bit. We did, Gulf Breeze and some of the Everglades stuff. But this one, we're researching a thing called the Crestview incident, which is north of Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, same that coast.
Yeah.
And 1967, the school, there's a young boy outside, and he sees a strange object in the sky. This is long after the 1950s UFO mania.
Okay.
So it had kind of calmed down by this point. But he sees this unusual thing. He tells his teacher. His teacher comes out. They can't figure it out. It's way high, and then it just gone. Disappears. So the next day, that's the talk of the school, right? What did Jimmy see? What did little Jimmy see? And the professor saw it too. The teacher saw it too. So we got an adult and a kid.
Right. So it's not like it was just a tall tale from a little kid looking for attention.
Right. Well, the next day, it came back with friends.
Oh.
And everybody sees it. Hundreds of students.
Wow.
Dozens of teachers. They're all watching it, and it comes close. And it's got, like I said, little ones. It's a big disc with the turret, the classic saucer, and then it's got these little ones that are just little spinny things. And people saying they looked like pills and stuff. And of course now, with the recent sightings that have come out from the Navy, we would have called those the Tic Tac ships that we've been seeing that the Navy released and all that. Now that they're actually officially talking about unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs they call them now. So, and they do a bunch of strange things. The kids all run out of school. They ain't keeping kids in school with this stuff going on.
They want to go see what's happening.
Yeah, so they're all pressed against the fence watching this, and then they fly into the trees and don't damage the trees. It's like they portaled out.
Oh, wow.
Except then the big one comes back, does another big light show, and then it zips off into the sky super fast.
Wow.
Everybody's freaking out.
Oh, yeah. I'd freak out too.
Right? So now, why don't we talk about this? Because it's, Roswell, everybody talks about it. Nobody saw anything. We just heard about it. Yeah.
Right.
Later that day, the military show up. The Navy, the Army, and government men.
Okay.
Men
in Black.
Exactly. They start interviewing certain witnesses.
Right.
And one of the boys says, well, they were hovering like helicopters. So guess what the newspaper prints? Unusual sighting of helicopters on maneuvers north of Crestview. And so they're like, it was just helicopters.
Yeah.
So everybody goes away thinking, oh, we just saw some weird helicopters.
Right. No big deal.
Well, again, it just disappears into the annals of UFO lore until Facebook.
Right.
Suddenly,
it's back.
From that school start posting, hey, do you remember this? And then, of course, the Navy released just a couple years ago, suddenly that was something real. We saw something strange, and this is close to what we saw. And it wasn't helicopters. I knew it wasn't helicopters, and I was afraid to talk about it because I was a crazy guy. And, I was afraid to talk about it because nobody else was talking about it. And yes, now it's blowing up. So we got to interview a bunch of people about this sighting.
Oh, cool.
And one of them said his father kept a list of the men who came to visit him at his house. And I'm like, you have a list of the names? So I'm thinking historically, I got some officers I can look up.
Right, that you can maybe reach out to and
see if they're still alive, if they're because this was 1967, so it's feasible. I mean, these were kids who are now still older than me, but but they were willing to talk about this now. So I was like, okay. So I get the guy's list, and I'm so excited to see the names, and it's Officer Sinclair. I'm like, okay, well, that's
pretty generic.
Down, yeah, semi. And then, of course, the next is a Captain Smith. Great. That's going to be good. But then the last one was the government man, was one word, and it was named Cold. And if you are into cryptids or the UFO community, that word sent shivers down my spine. I still get goosebumps when I saw that paper. And I'm like, holy crud. Yeah. For those of you who don't know why I'm kind of feeling this way, and for those of you who aren't up on your cryptid lore, there is a legendary figure in the Men in Black and Mothman history and all that named Indrid Cold, who was an alien sighting in the 1950s. He talked to a man on the side of the road. Several other men saw him. He was also known as the Grinning Man, in a bright green suit, and smiled and talked without moving his mouth. Talked with telepathy, and just crazy story. And this guy Derenberger found him and reported it to the police. And this is in Parkersburg, West Virginia. And this is just a few years before the Mothman and everything else. And this is the 1952 UFO flap and all this. So suddenly I'm digging down a hole and going up to West Virginia, which is my homeland, and the eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio Valley. And so now our new book is Eerie Appalachia, and I tie it all together in ways I never thought I would. So.
Wow. I'm very excited for that. That's gonna be a good read.
I think I'm very pleased with this one. This is definitely one from the heart. I mean, I loved all three of my children in different ways, but this one is it's my newest, so of course I'm very.
It's the baby.
It goes to edit next March 12th. We go to the editors with the final edit.
Oh, okay.
And it should be out in August, just in time for the Mothman Festival.
Yay!
So, which we'll hopefully be premiering it at, if they have it this year. They didn't last year, so we'll see.
Yeah, things have been weird. Some events are happening, some are still kind of iffy. So, but that'd be a great place to premiere it.
We're hoping. We were supposed to premiere it at last year's. The plus side is we got an extra year to work on it.
Yes.
Because of everything. Publisher delayed it, all that. So fantastic. Carrie got to do some amazing illustrations. We will be premiering some of those very soon.
Nice. Very, very cool. That's very exciting news. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, there we go. A little tease for you.
Now, I do have a couple of other quick questions before we go, and this is something that I discussed with my husband a little bit. So we have to ask, and speaking of the cryptids, who would win in a fight, the skunk ape or the yeti, and why is it the skunk ape?
Oh, well.
Just saying.
Yeah. It's funny because, like we were discussing pre-show that I have a man crush on Brian Blessed.
Yes.
I think you can see his book over there.
Somewhere.
Who has spent his life searching for Yeti. Voltan from the Flash Gordon movies, for those who don't remember who Brian Blessed is. Anyway, he actually believes in them and spent his life searching for them and still wants to find them. Yeah. And he did the thing for when we hit the bestseller list. My publisher got him to send me a little voicemail greeting, and he's like, "You're searching for the Florida Yeti," and I love the monsters. It's so good, and it's just, Muncy's alive. I was so thrilled.
That's awesome.
Off the chain with that. Anyway, it was crazy. So if they were in a fight,
who would take it?
The Abominable Snowman has, it would. I think it's kind of like who wins in a fight, Batman or Jackie Chan, and it would be who if they fought in a Home Depot. Suddenly Batman loses a little and Jackie Chan gains a lot of advantage.
Yeah.
So, it's
the place of the fight would really factor in where that battle takes place.
Because if it's in the Himalayas, of course Skunk Ape's, he's not built for that.
No.
They have a lighter fur. They're not as built for that. But our skunk apes are supposedly much more aggressive.
Yes.
And again, there's multiple skunk apes. Are we talking the Barden Booger, who likes to just sit by a pond and fish and is more ghostly? Or do we go, the classic Ocala National Forest skunk apes? Those are the ones that attacked a town.
I think we're going classic on this one.
Okay. Because then we go down to the Everglades, they're more orangutan-like, and they're a little more lanky and light. And so they, so like I said, you got the whole gamut down here.
We get a variety of them.
If we go for Mayaca State Park and Ocala National Forest skunk apes, they'd kick the Yetis. But, 6 ways till Sunday.
I know it. So for those of you arguing that with me, take it.
I will reach out to my fellow skunk ape hunters and find out. And people ask us that, are you skunk ape hunters? Are you ghost hunters? Are you ufologists? And I'm like, we are parajournalists. We like the story.
Yes.
And we want the history behind it. We go on ghost hunts. We go with experts and skunk apes and UFOs, and we go to all these places, but we're there for the story. We actually just enjoy people telling the stories.
Yeah.
The Brooks Bridge up in the Panhandle. It's the story of this ghostly wolves that come out on full moon nights and run across the water.
And people go looking for it too, don't they?
That was just it. We thought it was this obscure legend that only we knew. And we go out there and there's this crowd of people standing around. I'm like, what? Is there an event tonight? Is there going to be a boat parade?
What happened?
And we started asking people. Everybody's like, we're looking for the wolves. We saw them when we were kids. I saw them 6 months ago. I saw them last week. It's like, what? It's
it's
real,
a thing.
And it's not talking a huge crowd, but a dozen or so people.
More people than you would expect to be out there.
Exactly. On a bridge in Destin, Florida at midnight.
Jeez. That's pretty cool.
That's why the stories are what draws. So.
Well, I can definitely see why. Now I know you've got the new book coming out, and I know you've got an appearance coming up soon too. You're going to is it Sci-Fi in Bartow, right?
Sci-Fi Bartow, yes. Nice. The whole town becomes a giant comic book convention. It's awesome. It's free.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't been, definitely worth the trip. The courthouse there is super haunted, and that's where they do the costume contests and all that.
That's awesome.
It's like vendor, a vendor room at a Comic-Con or a Spooky Empire, and just all done, down the street like a yard sale, and then you've got sci-fi cars. There's a big giant Cylon Raider car from the old school Battlestar Galactica.
Wow.
I'm geeking out because I'm an old school nerd, so I'm loving that. And then and it's just fun. I'll be there. I'm telling a urban legend that has their theme is robots this year. Last year was monsters, so I fit right in.
Oh, I was gonna say that was perfect.
This year it's robots, so I was like, And then luckily I found a urban legend about a very infamous video game that ties to Orlando.
Oh.
So I'll be discussing that there.
Okay. Now, is that going to be, what day are you going to be doing that on?
That's Saturday, and I'll be on the main stage with that.
Oh, cool.
This Saturday, or Friday night, I'm on Mysteries of the National Parks.
Okay.
Talking skunk apes and some other cryptids.
Nice.
We're talking about Pinky, our wonderful sea monster from the St. Johns River. That's our Nessie. And some other obscure other obscure cryptids.
Yeah.
That'll be that talk. So.
Very awesome.
Then I don't think we have a lot of appearances for a little while because we'll be starting the book tour this fall as soon as they figure it out for us. But we'll be mostly up Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia at first, but then we'll be coming back home around Halloween.
Oh, nice.
We always do. So.
Now, are you guys going to have a vendor booth out there? Or are you going to bring having some of the books and stuff to bring if folks want to come see you and pick it up?
We'll have a tent at Bartow, and it's supposed to be lovely weather this weekend. I know the rest of the country is frozen, but we're going to be in the 60s, and not even the low 70s, I think.
Oh, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I can't tell you enough how much that town just goes all out for this. It's like watching, what was that? Trick or Treat.
Yes.
They go to that one town in Ohio that
Cary, Ohio.
Yes, which is a real place. And they do go crazy for Halloween. I grew up near there. But it's in the new book. Anyway, just circling, but that's what they do. But they go all out for sci-fi, which is awesome.
Oh, that's very, very cool. I do have a couple of questions coming from the chat.
Yes, always.
I've got one of our guys hanging in with us. Brian's asking if you've ever visited the Last Resort Bar and Grill in Port Orange. He said that's supposed to be haunted by, really, Eileen Warnos.
Yes. There's so many bars and grills that are haunted, and that's one of my other things. I'm a foodie, as you can tell.
Nothing wrong with that. Me too.
So yes, I would say the Last Resort is definitely a fun stop. Okay. Just because you also get to drive through Yeehaw Junction, and it's always fun to say Yeehaw Junction. I think my favorite haunted restaurant in Florida is Ashley's Restaurant in Rock Ledge. Okay. They actually put the ghost on the menu, and they have pictures that people have taken in there on the walls.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Another murder victim, terrible story. There's the Blue Anchor down in Delray Beach. I don't know if anybody knows that. That's Jack the Ripper. It was originally in Whitechapel in London, and they were going to tear it down, and they took it brick by brick and moved it to Florida.
Really?
And 3 of the Ripper's victims' last meals were in the Blue Anchor. So you can walk through the doors that Jack the Ripper probably walked through.
That's a trip. Wow.
Got its own ghost down there. So yeah, you can just, that was one possible book, was just going to be Haunted Restaurants of Florida, but we're like,
it needs to happen.
We put them in Creepy Florida. It wound up it was just going to be a chapter, and we wound up doing it just like we always did with the road maps. So.
Yep. Yeah, I've got Haunt Scenes chiming in. There's said nice ascot.
Thank you. Not many can pull it off.
No, not at all. And you do very well, sir. They said that they've been to Rock Ledge, and they went to the graveyard that's nearby as well. Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. I remember seeing them posting some pictures about that too.
Yeah, that's where she was buried.
Okay.
After they found her, a couple miles from the restaurant. That was the last place she was seen. She was a waitress there.
Oh wow.
Her murderer was caught and all that. But there's other ghostly presences in that restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's a fun place to visit, and it's right on the Space Coast, so you can go there and then go see SpaceX launch something. Or go to the Launch Complex 34, which is the haunted launch pad out in the middle of nowhere. You have to ask permission, but they'll let you go.
Really?
That's where the Challenger Memorial is.
Oh, okay.
You say you want to see the Challenger Memorial, and they'll let you go.
That's how you get around it.
That's how you get around it. But and that was so famous. That was a Doctor Who episode. The Lost Astronaut was from that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Now, for those of you that want to check this out, Mark's books are available. You can get them online, eerieflorida.com, or you can come visit him this weekend at Bartow. Yep.
And if you order from the website or at Bartow, my lovely wife and I will sign them for you, and Carrie will draw a pretty picture in it for you. She always does. And she did all those illustrations on the covers there. And she's also, if you order from our website, we'll do that for you too. For a little extra, she'll do a very pretty picture. But you can also find our books at Amazon and Walgreens and CVS, and our publisher put us everywhere.
Nice.
One of the fun things we get is when our fans post the weirdest place they found us. we're big in Harbor Freight.
Really?
We're very happy. We're big in Cracker Barrels.
Nice. That makes sense.
How far north we go in Cracker Barrels. We've seen some Georgias, but we haven't seen Tennessee yet. Well, when Eerie Appalachia comes out, I'm sure we'll be there.
Oh yeah, then it'll start getting that northern review. I'll have to go online and order them. I know you were kind enough to send us some of the e-copies, and I love an e-copy, but I love a physical book. So we'll have to go online and snag them all, and then take a road trip of our own and check out some of these places.
You should head to Bartow Saturday. It'll be a lot of fun.
I gotta see what we're doing this weekend. I don't think we're doing anything. If I can maybe convince the husband.
It's free, and there's lots of good restaurants there, and they go crazy. They do. There's a cookie store that makes kind of crazy cookies and cakes, and they always theme them.
All right, done. Sold. That's all it took was cookies and cakes, and I'm sold.
Yeah. I'm there for the wings. Tell that to your husband. I'm there for there's a wing place there that's to die for. So
you'll have to send me the information on that then, because chicken wings and cookies are always my 2 favorite things, and definitely a win anytime.
Yep, and just like I said, Facebook Sci-Fi Bartow has all the information, and it's 11 to 6, and like I said, it's free.
Yes,
can't beat that.
No, not at all. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing some of these amazing stories and some of the books that you've written, and I can't wait for the new one.
Yes, and I'll come back and chat some more then. We can go over those stories.
Yes, definitely. We have to make it happen. Is there anything else that you wanted to plug while I got you?
No. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much. Always love your show. We've been watching for a while, and just happy to be on. So very good, and keep up the great work. And I will part with what we used to always say at Hellview. See you on the other side.
All right, boys and girls, until next time, keep it spooky. Bye.